decision matrix for some U-bolts and I-bolts. There are more items on this list. I just took a picture of the first one because the rest wouldn't fit into the slide. This also happens to be the one that won the matrix. So we'll be using 1.5 inch for the inner diameter 304 stainless steel U-bolts. Can I control the slides? Or?
Just let me know whenever you want.
Okay, so yes, could you change the slide, please? So last week, Monday, we changed the locations of our parachutes and the payload, and we planned on shortening the forward airframe and maybe extending the aft airframe a bit in order to make space for the main and drogue. So just as a demonstration of where things are, up on the left, we have the payload in the front section of the rocket. And then the next parachute is the main parachute, which is going to be attached closer to the avionics bay. And then we have the drogue parachute attached to the same shock cord. This will cause some challenges. So part of our decision matrices we made last week was for shock cords. So could you go to the next slide, please? This is the matrix that one of my team members made for shock cords. He wasn't able to complete it for our meeting yesterday, but he finished it last night. And we were able to talk about his different objectives that he had yesterday. So the objectives that he assessed was strength, the length of the shock cord, durability, width, and price. So strength and durability are both important because we're going to be using the shock cord multiple times, and we also have to make sure it's able to withstand the forces of when the parachutes deploy. Length is important because we're going to be having 2 parachutes on one shock cord, and we don't want them to tangle or like hit each other or have the different sections of the rocket hit each other. In this matrix, we can see that the one that succeeded, or this one we're going to use, is the Wildman Rocketry Kevlar shock cord that's 7/16 of an inch in diameter. So yeah, I asked him to add some more for next time, or for later in the week, but he didn't have time today. Could you move on, please?
Really quick, what is the G per foot referring to in durability?
I'm not really certain. I wasn't able to ask him because we didn't talk about that in the meeting, but I believe that's grams per foot. That's what makes sense to me, is that it would be a unit of mass. I'm not really certain how that relates to durability, but yes.
Okay.
It might be that there's more like rope, or there's more material per foot, and that would make it more durable.
Maybe it's density. Like, I'm thinking of.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah. Like, but it's just a weird way of describing it. It might just be that he picked the units from Open Rocket. That's my first guess. Like, he didn't. Maybe.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
I'll make sure to check with him.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if he took PML or not. I'm pretty sure one of the things. Did he not?
I'm not sure if he's taking DML either. I'll talk.
I'm pretty sure you're supposed to linearly scale the things, so that the numbers actually like for instance, you would get the prices wouldn't be so close to each other because it's dependent on the price divided by the other price. If that makes sense. Instead of more qualitative, oh yeah, this is less type of approach.
Yeah, I definitely made that mistake last year when I did mine, so it's definitely just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go over that because I definitely forgot about that yesterday, and yeah. Okay. Thank you for the feedback. We'll go over that. Yes. Okay. And then also we've been updating the kinetic energy and drift radius calculations. The simulations team gave us a new MATLAB simulation to refine the numbers, and they're within a few decimal places of the ones that we've been using. We've been using a Google spreadsheet to do the calculations. They both have their different benefits. I think the MATLABs will look more professional on the PDR, but the nice thing about the spreadsheet is that it's all in one place and it's all on one page. So yeah. Are there any more questions about avionics and recovery?
What's your ground hit velocity? Just ballpark.
It's about 21 feet per second.
All right, that's good.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit fast if you do have the opportunity to bring it down.
Yeah, considering like this rocket's just big as hell, like regardless, like it's still gonna be like a big impact.
Yeah, I would aim for 17 if possible, but I know that like that's
within range. It's not bad.
Yeah, 21 is within range. It's just on the upper limit. So if you can get down to like 17 or 18, you're definitely going to be safe.
Okay.
I'm curious if you decided to include your payload in the upper section for your KE calculations.
I did not, because it comes out, so
Okay,
I took
cool.
it out.
Sure.
And how did you guys actually calculate the descent rate? Like, given that the payload parachute could like interfere with that in the sim.
Okay. So the way that I found descent rate was I left the payload in for one simulation, and then I plotted it and found the descent rate just by looking at the slope between the apogee and when the main comes out. And then I took the payload out and found the descent rate of just the main with the payload out. Yeah, because open rocket really doesn't allow.
So you had the payload in for the drogue descent, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm just making sure that and then did you make sure to delete the payload's parachute for?
Yeah, I got rid of it. I just deleted it. I made its coefficient of drag 0.
Okay, yeah.
So that its mass would stay in, but that it wouldn't.
And did you double check how much volume the two parachutes are going to take up in the aft?
I did not double check that in the open rocket, but I'll write that down to do that.
Yeah, definitely for next week, that's something I would check. I mean, last year we got to the field and realized that our parachutes didn't quite fit. So, especially now that we're going to have two parachutes like together in a smaller section.
That's huge.
Okay.
Yeah, very important.
Joel, would you mind going back a slide? Just real quick, or another, or yeah. Did you guys test for the coefficient of drag for that parachute? Or can you go forward a slide to the design matrix?
The coefficient of drag for the shockwards?
Oh my god, yeah, I'm off. But yeah, I'm completely off. But quick question about the parachutes. Did you factor in their coefficients of drags? Just real quick.
In the open rocket, yeah, I told Matthew about them. Yes.
Okay, just making sure, because
yeah,
that's pretty big when it comes to, and it's something that's like not really shown. For like, I know for some parachutes it just gives you like the drag rate, but that's really not useful, like comparatively at least.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I know Wildman does post all of their CDs, so just double check based on their website and make sure that it's in there.
Okay. Are we good with avionics?
I have some questions. So did you calculate the drift radius for the payload and for the rocket?
Yes, we did calculate the drift radius for the rocket. I have not calculated the drift radius for the payload.
If you could do that, because it needs to be under 1 kilometer, if possible.
The drift radius right now, I believe, with 20-mile-per-hour winds for the rocket is 0.4 miles.
Okay. Yeah, so are you going to be, is it like a handheld controller, or is this going to be like a controller setup where we're going to have it on like a table? Alexander.
So basically it's a receiver that just has a composite video out. And so it could be a laptop, whatever device we want that can take composite video is what we're going to be using. So whether that be like an old fashioned TV or like just a simple monitor to like composite to HDMI to a monitor, something like that.
It's worth noting that I believe the launch pad is like 500 or maybe even 1,000 feet away from where you're supposed to be standing, as well as where our setup for all of our tools and stuff is going to be is like way farther than that. So yeah, the launch pad is like pretty far from where you'll be standing, so you should try to factor that into your drift radius, I suppose.
Yeah, and then do you also have the kinetic energy for the payload at impact?
No, I do not. But I believe, I don't have the numbers right now in front of me, but I believe that right now its impact velocity is like 15-ish feet per second.
15 feet per second. Okay.
Not slower.
Okay. We just need to run some structural calculations to make sure that our structure can actually take that force. So.
Okay. And then we'll, if need to, we can change the parachute.
Okay.
It's already going slower than the rocket under main.
Okay. That was all my questions.
Okay, so we have testing now.
Okay, hey guys, I'm Megan. I'm the testing lead this year. So the testing subteam mostly has just kind of been working to finalize the testing plan for this year's project. And that's something that's kind of been developing along with the design because we don't like particularly design like one of the particular like components of the project. We more just like look at like kind of like going through the project and like analyzing different things and like picking like specific things that we really want to focus on for testing is what we've been doing. So right now we have a list of 28 tests, but we have more. We're just trying to like incorporate everything together and combine it all to make the final plan. The things that we focused on the most at the beginning were tests that would test like the structural strength and to make sure that the rocket was like recoverable and reusable and all of that stuff. So we did that. That was what we did most early on in the year. We also put a big focus on the separation and the parachute deployment and just the parachute packing, because kind of like Colin had mentioned, that was, or maybe it was Dylan, but that was something that last year maybe we didn't highlight enough. So we want to focus on that a lot more this year and make sure that we do a lot of separation tests and things like that to make sure that the configurations for the parachutes are going to work well together and that the rocket's going to separate enough so that everything can deploy properly and everything like that. And then the most recent thing that we've been doing a lot of work with is getting together tests for the payload. That's the biggest thing that we've been doing in these most like recent weeks. And we've been talking to Alex a lot about that. But one thing that we did do in between, and I want to let a member of my sub team talk about it a little bit, was go through the plan and try to get some more quantitative tests together, because early on in the project, when I made the initial plan for the proposal, it was really like all the tests were qualitative, just like, oh, we're going to do this thing and then we're just going to observe how it behaves. But we wanted to get some more actual numbers. And so I had some sub-team members go through and look at that for me. So if you want to go to the next slide, Caroline is going to talk a little bit about what they did for that.
So yeah, me and a couple other team members just brainstormed some ways to modify the test to be quantitative so we get like actual numbers for the data. Because yeah, like she said, the proposal plan was heavy in qualitative and observational tests. So now we have a range of tests that include more numerical data. So for example, some of the like ideas we came up with, or we could use something like an inch-on machine or a force meter to measure like the maximum force like a part can withstand without breaking. So we can get a number for like the force. For basic like yes, no tests, like did it work or not, ways that we could turn that into like numerical data is to, out of a certain number of trials, how many times does it work, and turn that into a percentage of like the times that it worked. To get like a quantitative number. And other examples we came up with were quantitatively measuring like the distance away the GPS can transmit, or calculating force from something like black powder. So those are a few of the things that we brainstormed for quantitative tests.
I just would like to add real quick. I think you guys could do like an inch-on test with the shock cord, right? That'd be a good test, like a tensile test.
Yeah, that is one of them that we have.
Do you happen to know if we have access to any of those instruments in the labs?
I talked to Lind about it, and he had said, like, at the time when I talked to him, which was a little bit while back, that like anything that I wanted, like, to just talk to him about it, like, particularly, and he would do like whatever he could to see like what I could get access to. I don't know about particularly the Instron machine because I haven't like brought up that particular thing with him just yet. But he seemed like he would be like willing to like, you know, work with us on that. But I'll talk to him more about like the specifics now that we have like some like more concrete ideas on what we're gonna want to use.
I feel like as far as the Instron goes, I feel like that's a good thing. Or I feel like the mom lab teachers or professors would definitely be able to do that. Like that doesn't seem that far-fetched.
Yeah, we did that last year, and I think that Lucas knew someone that he was gonna like put me in contact with.
Yeah, that doesn't seem as hard to like at least like budget wise or like constraints. It's not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on what material you're using. That's what I was saying. Like the shock cord is the best thing for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fiberglass.
Yeah. No, not so much. But yeah, you can go to the next slide if that's all for that one. So yeah, the other thing that we've been working on a lot as the testing sub team is getting together like a plan for the payload test. It's almost kind of like a separate plan at this point. I'm almost considering making like it a separate, like one for the rocket and one for the payload. Because we've been doing a lot of work on getting together, like compiling all the stuff that needs to be tested. And that's been another thing that's been developing a lot. Like as Alex has developed his design, we've been trying to like kind of work alongside that. So this past week, I had like a list of tests for like sub-team members to go through and write up like some ideas for procedures for those. So we're going to be like finalizing that I'll probably be finalizing that up like this weekend so we can have like some procedure ideas for how we're going to test a lot of the things like the VTX and the Raspberry Pi and the control software, some of the things we know we're going to need to test a lot. So we're trying to get together like a really good, like solid plans for how we want to do that. So we worked a lot on that this past week. And the other big one is testing like the Weeble design and stuff like that. That's probably the thing that we want to get testing like the soonest because it's something that we can start testing really soon. So we're hoping to start talking about getting together a prototype so that we can start working with that and actually like physically testing it. So that's probably going to be not once we kind of get the plan squared away, that's going to be the next thing that we're going to move on to is looking at getting started with doing that and working with Alex and his team on getting that together and starting to work with that.
Alex, how far away is the payload from being ready for prototyping?
So my team members have been working for all the SolidWorks, and I almost have all the SolidWorks parts. So this week, I'm going to make sure it all fits together this weekend. And then if it all fits together, the structure at least can be like ready for testing with like the Weeble. So it could be 3D printed to at least test the shape and like the weight allotment, because we will know where exactly the center of mass should be. So we would be able to get the center of mass. We could at least test the Weeble design. Yeah,
and I meant to put plywood or 3D printed on that. We didn't like decide it was wood. I forgot to put that down. So it will either 3D print it or we'll do something with wood or something like that. But yeah. That's my last slide. So if anybody has any other questions.
Yeah, so how are you combining your documentation with safety? Like, are you guys working together on the safety documentation, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the safety we're writing that as well. It is like a subsection of the plan. Like every test that we write, we also write like the safety procedures for it. At least that's what we've been doing so far. And I talked to Chaz about that at the beginning of the year, and that's what we decided that we would do, that I would just write the safety for that and then run it by him, and he could tell me if I needed to change anything like that. And it worked well for the proposal, so that's, I'm pretty sure, what we're planning on doing for PDR as well.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool if you guys did. I haven't checked your first proposal, but I think it'd be cool if like Chaz's documentation section, like, you know how like you kind of write equations as like a parentheses and the equation in it and like MomLab and stuff. Like if you kind of did that while we're testing, so you're like, okay, so the team will ensure that the body tube can withstand the forces of flight, and then parentheses test blank, and then you could go to that test and be like, oh, this is how they do that.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying there. And I remember that was another thing that Lind had told me. That's why I made the list like with reference numbers for all the tests, because he had said that he wanted us to be able to do that, to be able to reference the tests like throughout the rest of the report if we needed to. So yeah, it's definitely a good point. We should talk to Chaz about that as well.
Okay, I'll be moving on to the next slide then. Yeah, so I'm the structures lead. So at our past meeting, which I held yesterday, like 2 weeks before, I guess, I had people research materials for all of our exterior components. So what that meant was I had someone find out what we wanted to use for our nose cone. So they would do research, see what we have online, see what is available for us, like for a specific design, like do they have plastic, fiberglass, carbon fiber. I had them research it, and then also find out different like value, how we would evaluate what material we wanted. Like why would we want fiberglass over carbon fiber? So there's different objectives that we want each component to fit in with. So I have some members who are going to talk about what part they researched and then some of the parameters they found for it and why it's important that they found these parameters. So Jason can talk about nose cones.
So the two materials I researched or I found that were common in nose cones were fiberglass and polypropylene plastic. Fiberglass, it's stronger and more durable than plastic. It's more expensive though, and it's also heavier, although that might actually be a good thing because we want to move our center of gravity up, which that could act as a heavier thing to pull it up. And then for our decision matrices, some of the things we're looking at are the strength, cost, and weight. And then also separate from the specific materials, we're also looking at the shape of the nose cone, which I found that under like transonic speeds, the shape isn't too important and the changes of the aerodynamics is negligible. So the like a more easy to produce shape or a cheaper shape is probably better. So we're looking at an ogive shape because that's cheaper. And then cost is weighted more heavily than strength and weight because we just want to reduce the cost, and the nose cone isn't the main thing impacting the ground, although it does need to be able to withstand that force. And then the weight is also important as we want it to not be too heavy, but also still pull the center of gravity up.
Okay, and then so that's our nose cone. That's the design process, how we've been going through it. We've been seeing what kind of materials we have available to us, and then these objectives. And then over the course of the week, they're going to be researching all of these different objectives. So they're going to look for what strength, what cost, what weight there is for each of these materials. And then from there, we're going to have a final design by next week. So for our next slide.
Do you have a way to quantify the strength of the nose cone?
Yeah, so right now we don't have a parameter for it because we didn't really look into it too much, but it'll most likely be in like KSI, right? So it'll be tested by the manufacturers because oftentimes they provide it themselves, where it'll be like, okay, this fiberglass has a shear strength or axial strength of this KSI value. And then from there, we'll provide the source of where we found it. And then it'll be weighted in here. And then that's what we'll be discussing at our next meeting. So airframes, if Maggie, you would like to talk about these?
Yeah, so for airframes, I looked at blue tube, quantum tube, fiberglass, and carbon fiber, and assess them based on the strength, cost, weight, and machinability. So phenolic has some advantages in terms of cost and weight because it's pretty light and pretty cheap, but it's also like not the strongest, and it could be strengthened with something like fiberglass, but that's not ideal because of machinability. And then blue tube is a lot stronger than phenolic because it's less prone to cracking, and it's pretty affordable, and the cost is higher though than that of phenolic. Quantum tube is pretty cheap and light, and but it's not that good with like high levels of heat, so that's not ideal. Fiberglass is strong, but it's kind of expensive and not super light. Plus, machining can be kind of not the best because it can be toxic to breathe it in. And carbon fiber is really strong and light, but it's really expensive, so that's really not great. Yeah. Yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, so these are the materials we will be considering, and then these are the parameters for our decision matrix. So fins, so we have Cispan.
So for the fins, the materials that were narrowed down to be chosen were the birch plywood, G10 fiberglass, and carbon fiber plates. And narrowing down these three materials, we're looking at the material's rigidity, its tensile strength, its cost, the density, and machinability in order of importance. Looking at the rigidity is how well the fin can survive upon impact on landing. The tensile strength, how well it can survive the forces while in flight. The cost, how much the material will cost. The density, since the fins itself, in comparison to the rest of the rocket, isn't weighed that much, density should still be looked at, but it isn't weighed as much. And machinability, how easily these materials can be shaped into fins after we purchase them.
So yeah, that's all our all of the components I was showcasing for today. So if you have any questions.
I have a question about the fins. Are you guys evaluating different fin thicknesses as well?
No. I'm going off of the one thickness that we were provided. So I was leaving that more up to flight dynamics to determine what the optimal fin thickness would be. And then our job would just be to manufacture it and make sure that it is like we're capable to do it.
And do you have any way to see if whatever thickness we go with won't flutter?
So again, with that, I would leave that more up to flight dynamics to determine. But I think we went with 3/16 inch. And I believe that's also what we went with last year because it was like sufficiently strong enough so that it wouldn't experience fin fluttering. But I'm sure we can find out a little bit as we do more research about like its tensile strength and rigidity. It's how prone it would be to flexing in flight.
Just saying or adding, those fins were heavy last year, like way heavier than we expected. So like they're for sure stiff, but I'd honestly be really concerned with the weight of at least like the fiberglass.
The last time I checked it, the fins were about 2 pounds. So each fin is probably half a pound. Okay. In the grand scheme of things, our rocket's like 30 pounds. So like
last time it added a significant amount of weight during manufacturing. That's what I'm pointing it out. It's just, I think the material was different than what we expected too.
On fiberglass, and Open Rocket is accounting for it. So
okay,
get it, we can update it with the density, but right now all of our calculations should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah. I wouldn't trust the intuition that the fin is stiff while you're holding it, so that it's stiff while it's on a rocket. Because I mean, there's videos and stuff online of people pointing their cameras down at their fins. Fin flutter is a big issue, and someone should definitely run through the calculations of that. There's like a few equations out there that you can find that'll help you with that. And NASA they know that fin flutter exists, and they will probably talk to you about it, because I've gotten roasted for having 2 fin of fins before, 3/16ths actually.
I know in the past, Lind has called us out for using the terminology fin flutter. So
that's the word that NASA uses too.
The word NASA uses, but Lind doesn't like it, so we're tailoring it to around his terminology.
Lind is above NASA.
So even though, like I said earlier, we're not going to be just like holding it. We do have a way to measure it. We have rigidity and tensile strength. So that'll be what we'll be using to determine like how much it's going to be flexing during flight.
Okay, yeah, and that's definitely something that the modeling and simulation team can take a second look at, just to verify that it won't be an issue.
If this is it, then this is pretty much the end of it, unless someone from IREC has an update.
Yeah, I can just give a quick update about flight dynamics. Would you mind sharing or letting me share the screen? Is that possible?
Yeah, you should have it. All of the leads are co-hosts.
Okay. All right, so do you see this little fin thing going on here?
Yeah.
All right, so this is one of the blades of our ACS system, right? This is just one of the blades. What Ansys does, very simply, and what we're going to be trying to do, or we're going to be trying to use this for with the rest of the year, is it breaks down this small model of the blade into small differential elements. So you can see like this mesh, right? This is one element right here. And then we can solve for stuff like, for example, like the force on this fin by calculating for this small element and using the boundary conditions like that to get the next element. So what it does essentially is it's breaking down a very big problem into a lot of small problems that the computer is able to solve for us. So what this gives us is, this is our strain. I want to show you the stress. So yeah, here's the stress on the fin. This isn't accurate at all, at least when it comes to like the use for the team, because like this half wouldn't be exposed, right? This half. But I just want to show you guys how Ansys works. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to see the stresses, right? So you can see like it's localized, or it's like the most along the edges, which is what we expect. That's where like the airflow is. But yeah, I think if you're extremely like interested in this aspect of like aerodynamics and flow sim, like we're going to be doing more of this over the year. And we're also doing simulations with MATLAB using Lind's code. And we're going to try to use that to calculate the drag, or rather, we're going to use a MATLAB code to calculate when to deploy the ACS, the altitude control system. So it perfectly hits our apogee. This isn't the end goal, but it's just one of the ways that we're going. So yeah, that was just a little update about flight dynamics. If you guys are interested, please hit up our channel. Yeah, that's all for me.
I have a general question about Lynn's MATLAB code. Does that cover like only up until like apogee, or does that simulate descent as well?
Not really descent. We can work on making it into descent, but this descent's not the thing. Yeah, it just doesn't cover descent. It would just be, it wouldn't be that hard for us to do. It'd be a great thing for as a project for either SO or IREC to implement within the code, just the drift and radius analysis, because it wouldn't really, after apogee, it's no longer a physics balance problem or like momentums and stuff. It's more of just like a hanging object, and then like that, like it's a linear thing. It's not as complicated. But yeah, we can definitely add that if you'd like.
Yeah, I know the SL modeling and sim team did
They made
that
one
in MATLAB. So that's something that we can maybe incorporate into Lens or
Yeah, for sure. It could just be added as a function, if anything.
Yeah.
So very easy. Yeah. That's a good way or vector for collaboration. So.
Okay.
I have a question, Bilal.
Yeah, go ahead.
Was that the final mesh you were using for that part?
This is a very like fast. I just want to show you the.
Okay.
But what were you gonna say anyways? Like anything
I would just be concerned about. It looked like you didn't have like the mesh really wasn't well defined at any of the tip edges, but mostly around that hole. So like yeah, if it was just quick, I would understand.
So you'd add edge size. Sorry, I'm learning Ansys too. But you'd add edge.
You would just need a lot more like triangles around the edges and especially around those tips, because I don't know if you saw, but you had like 1 or 2 triangles, which for tips and especially for holes is not good for FEA analysis.
Yeah, for sure. All right, thank you.
And one more quick announcement for SL in general. NASA did send us media release forms. So anybody who's possibly interested in going into competition in April needs to fill out that form and send it to either me or your sub-team lead. We need those forms so that people can go to competition in April.
Okay, and then if that's it, we do have one more thing to announce. Okay, so Swamp Launch, we are hosting an informational event with Blue Origin next week on Thursday. So this is what they sent us. I'll post an announcement to it in Slack, but specifically it's an information session next Thursday at 5 p.m. It will be consisting of them just talking to us about what they do. And then so if you want to be a part of it, you have to sign up here and then they'll send you an email to confirm that you've registered. And then that confirmation email will include a link to their WebEx, which is how they're hosting this event. So make sure you sign up for this and then I'll post a reminder to it in Slack. Okay, and then this is it for our presentation, our GBM today. So thank you for coming. I'll hold this open a little bit for any questions. Otherwise, this is the end of the GBM. Thanks for coming, guys. Next one will be in 2 weeks, and I'll send another reminder out the week before.
Join Flight Dynamics, best team.
Bryce, you are a genius to think of using 2 Jolly Logics on the main.
It's so simple.
I know, but I hadn't thought of it.
Such a simple solution to such a complex problem. Yeah, double the cost. But I honestly think that if you tell NASA you're going to be doing Jolly Logics, they're gonna say no. But you know what? You might as well. You know.
Okay. Okay. I think it's all leads here, almost all leads. So Cameron, I'd be interested to hear a little bit more from you. I'm sorry that we kind of cut you off at our leads meeting.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You have anything else to add, or just so that you can show us some of the slides you prepared?
Do you also have like a website as well that like I could look at this?
Oh.
I don't think he's there.
Damn. Okay.
It's unfortunate.
I do want to take a look at it, like at the stuff that you mentioned, like the workshop space. I think it'd be good for certs, personally.
Hey Megan, I'm curious. Sorry, this is unrelated. Do you have a zip ring test?
What?
A zip ring?
Do you have a zip ring test?
No. I don't even know what that is.
It's okay. So, it's unlikely, but since you're doing a strange deployment, it might be worthwhile looking into.
Okay.
Basically,